WeakFeilu Novel Network exclusive contract novel. Tomb Robbery. My wife is the ultimate queen. I have traveled through the world and learned about the Tomb Robbery series. After crossing over, the system awakened and seemed to have reached the pinnacle of life. But for now, I don't know the dragon hunting technique, Hare Hill Seal, Unloading Ridge Hand, and Moving Mountain Decision. My golden finger gave me my first task, and surprisingly gave me a wife, yes, and she's also a ghost wife. Go to the ghost-eye ancient city and find your wife, the demon queen. Reward her with the special bloodline of the green dragon tattoo, complete set of 16-character Yin Yang Feng Shui secrets, listening to thunder to fix acupoints, and smelling incense to identify objects. P.S. Introduction. WeakFeilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. 0001, My Damn Wife. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I have traveled through the Tomb Raiding series to learn more. After crossing over, the system awakened and seemed to have reached the pinnacle of life. But for now, I don't know the dragon hunting technique, Hare Hill Seal, Unloading Ridge Hand, and Moving Mountain Decision. The beginner gift package was given to me, but it only gave me a boost in strength, endurance, and speed. Although it may seem like a strong group, in the terrifying environment of tomb raiding, it is actually just average. I'm afraid even the black blind may not be able to match it. After all, they still have murder knives. And the first task my golden finger gave me was actually giving me a wife, yes, and she's also a damn wife. Go to the Xinjiang ancient city and find your wife, the Xinjiang queen. Reward her with a special bloodline of the Qinglong tattoo, complete set of 16-character Yin Yang Feng Shui secrets, listening to thunder to determine acupoints, and smelling incense to identify objects. Although I don't know what the effect of the Qinglong tattoo is, it should not be bad, right? In ancient times, among the three tribes, Qinglong was able to withstand one enemy in two without falling behind. The 16-character Yin Yang Feng Shui secret technique achieved Hu-Ba-Yi in the first half of the set, let alone a complete set. As for Ting Lei Ding acupoint, although not as impressive as Feng Shui secret techniques, Chen Yulo once used it to directly recognize Ping Shan Tomb, which shows that it is also a very impressive skill. As for smelling incense and identifying objects, there is no record of it, but it's not something that can be combined with a few skills, is it? But what kind of ghost is this damn wife? Why is she still my wife even after she's dead? Is it a ghost marriage? How should brother refuse? Can you refuse and then lose contact with the system? Open personal attributes. Traveling around age 22 strength. 3. Normal person 1, endurance. 3. Normal person 1, speed. 3. Normal person 1, skill. None props. None comment. Slightly stronger than ordinary people, but looking for your wife. Young man, are you ready to die? Looking at the introduction of this pit father, Zhou was speechless and knew that he wanted me to return this mission to my death. I don't know if Hu Bai and Shirley Yang have set off, as long as the plot is over. Where can I find these people? By the way, let's go ask Dajinya. Everyone is connected through Dajinya, and Dajinya is also a famous person in Panjiayuan, Beiping. With this in mind, Zhou casually asked someone, and fortunately, he was still in Beiping. Since we don't have the money, we can only walk there. Fortunately, there is a hospitable Dajinya in Panjiayuan, so it's not a problem to scrape a meal with our own hands. What? I don't know anything. In less than 4 seconds, I will ask if you are afraid or not. If I can lift you up with one hand, I'll ask if you're afraid. Although the journey is a bit long, fortunately his endurance is 3 times that of an ordinary person. Although he walked for 2 hours, he was not considered tired. At this time, Panjiayuan had many more genuine products than later generations. Although the prices were not cheap, even individuals could buy 1 or 2. As long as it's not eye-catching, it's enough to put it aside for 10 years in exchange for a house in Beiping. Of course, if we wait for another 20 years, it may not be enough. At that time, houses in Beiping may be even more valuable than antiques. De Jinya is indeed very famous in Panjiayuan, and just a little inquiry can reveal his shop. Zhou Yu had good luck. When he arrived, De Jinya happened to be in the store. At this time, De Jinya was also considered young, looking at the age of 30 and not very good looking, but there was a shrewd expression between his eyebrows. In his mouth, a golden tooth was particularly eye-catching. It was said to be enamel gold, but Zhou Yu forgot where it came from. However, being able to pull out one of his good teeth for this golden tooth was also a cruel person in this regard. De Jinya has a unique characteristic, and there is also a way to steal. If an ordinary person can trick you into limping, perhaps a piece of jade worth 3,000 can trick you into 200, but if he treats you as a friend, he won't deceive you. Earning your money, he will also make it clear to you. Overall, Zhou Yu has a good sensory experience for De Jinya. At this moment, De Jinya also noticed Zhou Yu. Looking at Zhou Yu's extraordinary temperament, the expression between his eyebrows didn't seem like something was about to come out. But it doesn't matter. If you come to buy something, it would be even better. De Jinya immediately got up from his old lounge chair and smiled, saying, "Master, what do you want? Do you have any specific needs? I dare not say anything else. There is no more comprehensive and authentic place in the entire Pan family than my De Jinya." Upon hearing this, Zhou Yu was curious. What dared to make him open his eyes and tell lies? Not to mention anything else, he doesn't have many counterfeits, but it can't be said that he doesn't, especially those that are intended for sale to foreigners, most of which are. How can you be sure that I'm here to buy something? De Jinya didn't take it seriously and thought it was a trip to test him. Upon hearing this, he immediately spoke confidently and said, "There are only 3 types of people who come to me. Those who buy goods, those who ship goods, and my friend. You're not my friend, and it doesn't look like you're shipping goods. So naturally, you're buying goods. Are you right?" Upon hearing this, Zhou Yu laughed, and in the next second, he directly slapped De Jinya's face. "So it seems you miscalculated. I'm the 4th type of person. I'm neither a buyer nor a seller. I'm here to make friends with you and borrow some money, and I'm here to ask for your help." 0002, who is not a ruthless person. You are listening at novelfull.audio. De Jinya's face suddenly froze. Does this bastard want to rob? Lying in bed and not asking about my big golden tooth, is old paper scared? Believe it or not, can I shout at the door and see a dozen or so people rushing in? Friend, you really have the courage to rob in broad daylight. I don't care about it today. You can go back and forth wherever you go, otherwise my golden teeth won't be easily pinched by anyone who wants to. Looking at De Jinya's gloomy expression, Zhou Yu also knew that De Jinya had misunderstood. But after thinking about it, Zhou Yu still decided to discuss borrowing money later. First, it's important to ask Hu Bai and Wang Pengzi about their itinerary. De Jinya, let's not talk about money for now. I want to ask you, do you know Hu Bai and Wang Kaixian? De Jinya was taken aback at the words and then frowned slightly. Is it a friend of Hu Bai and Wang Fatty? Can I borrow this money? Do you know Mr. Hu and the others? It seems like I've seen it before, but I'm not sure if I've gone to Moving Mountain yet. I hope I haven't set off yet. With this thought in mind, it's rare to feel worried about traveling around. It's not difficult to find the exquisite ancient city, but the difficulty lies in some mechanisms and luck. If there aren't many protagonists around, then I'm afraid I'll be buried in dirt before I even become the protagonist. I can't talk about getting to know each other, but I want to ask, did they both go to the Xinjiang archaeological team? Zhou Yu became a bit urgent, and his words were no longer convoluted. He directly pointed it out. Archaeological team. Do you know about the archaeological team? What did Mr. Hu and his team say? Although this matter is not confidential, not everyone can know about it. It was only with Virginia that he thought it was a leak made by Hu Ba and two people. After all, they only left here yesterday, and the news spread today, which is obviously not a normal way. Not really, but I need to go to Xinjiang country. How about it? Can you help me introduce myself? Virginia frowned at this moment, unable to see the origin of the journey clearly. Virginia stopped talking, but Zhou Yu didn't plan on waiting anymore. He looked like he needed to show some muscle. So, Zhou Yu stood up and looked at Virginia, while causing psychological pressure on him, he spoke up. I must go to Xinjiang country. If Brother Jinya is unwilling to help, I have no choice but to use some unconventional means. If Brother Jinya is not afraid of losses, you can call someone and let's fight in your shop. I also want to see how many items you still have left. As Zhou Yu spoke, he picked up a porcelain from the side and looked at it. Although he didn't know if it was real or fake, if Virginia dared to refuse, he would dare to let go. And even if this one is fake, are they all fake? At that moment, Virginia's mouth twitched, and he was not feeling well. Can you really fight him? If I hit myself, I'm afraid I'll cry to death. Brother, don't mess around, let go, let go. This is from the official kiln of the Song dynasty. Isn't it just a recommendation? I'll tell Professor Chen and give you your address. Would it be better if I had been so honest earlier? By the way, I still need to borrow 10,000 from you. I will repay you when this exquisite ancient city returns. Virginia felt like he was not feeling well, but looking at the porcelain from the Song dynasty, he reluctantly nodded. Okay, I'll borrow it. But I also borrowed this money, and I helped you out too. Can't you even refuse to report your family name, young man? Traveling around, you need to learn something to catch some bright objects. Does your TV weigh 30 pounds? This TV was newly bought by Virginia, and the previous one was given as a gift to Hu Ba and the others. Virginia was a bit confused about what Zhou Yu meant, but still nodded. However, in the next moment, Virginia was stunned. I saw Zhou Yu throwing up the TV with one hand and effortlessly taking it down. Not to mention anything else, this alone is not something that ordinary people can do. Seeing this, Virginia showed a sincere smile, and he likes to make friends with capable people. Okay, let's take advantage of Mr. Zhou. I'll give you my friend, Virginia. The money will be my support for you, and don't forget me if you have something good. Also, you have good skills, but you lack someone to help you divide the gold and fix the acupoints. As you mentioned before, Hu Ba Hu Yi is someone who understands celestial feng shui. Why don't I help you match and form a group? Looking at Virginia's smug expression, Zhou Yu looked a bit disdainful. He only had a superficial understanding. Do I still need Hu Ba when I see my wife on this trip? Of course, a few collaborations are also possible. No need, anyway, you can get to know Xinjiang ancient city this time. Let's take a look and see later. Besides, I'm usually used to being alone, and having too many people can easily lead to accidents. Indeed, most local masters would choose one person, especially the older generation, except for particularly large tombs. Not to mention spending too much money, it may even lead to self-destruction. In that era, in order to avoid it, most people were buried alone. Thinking of this, Virginia stopped persuading and said, okay, I'll go get you the money. You wait here. Since he had already recognized the ability of Zhou Yu, he chose to believe it. If Zhou Yu really followed the things in his store, he would be blind. Moreover, this object can never be imagined again in Beiping. Not only that, but this person is also unlikely to escape. He still has the ability to do so with his great golden teeth. 0003, Archaeological team heading to Xinjiang. You are listening at novelfull.audio. However, Zhou Yu didn't want to run either. When Virginia came out, Zhou had already put down the small Song dynasty porcelain vase. Seeing this, Virginia breathed a sigh of relief and then placed a bundle of 10 dozen 10 yuan bills in front of Zhou. You order, 10,000 yuan. No need, I believe you still have this credibility. I only have 1,000 yuan for this money, and you can help me buy a house for the rest. Since I have come to the capital, I will settle down and return your money when I come back. If I don't pay it back, the house will still be yours, and I'm even more fortunate than this 1,000 yuan. Hey, look at what you're saying. Don't worry, I'll definitely help you buy a big yard. In this era, a quadrangle is only around 18,000 yuan, and 10,000 yuan is worth around 1 million yuan for future generations. Eating hot pot, a small 10-plate plate of lamb, and 2 dozen beers is only 1.8 yuan. Before the housing prices skyrocketed, a newly built building in Beijing was only 2,000.3000 yuan. Okay, let me go visit the members of the archaeological team first. Upon hearing this, Virginia quickly wrote the address for Zhou, and Zhou only left with 1,000 yuan. Seeing Zhou leave, Virginia remained speechless by the door for a long time. He knew countless people, but he had never seen Zhou so strange before. However, one thing he could be certain of was that perhaps in the future, a great figure would emerge from the world of Confucius. 17, Niu Street Courtyard in the West District, that's it. Looking at the big red painted iron door in front of him, Zhou smiled. Seeing the target close in front of him, his good mood inevitably led to more smiles. Zhou walked forward and knocked on the door, and the crisp pa-pa sound seemed to be a bit pleasant to the ear. Not long after, a girl opened the door. The woman has a youthful expression on her face, with beautiful aspirations between her eyebrows and eyes, full of vitality that makes people love her. In her lifetime, even if placed in later generations, this girl is still at the level of a superstar. It is rare to have such a beautiful woman in the archaeological team. But at this moment, Zhou suddenly realized several people's names in his mind. Hualing, Chen Wenjin, Anning, and the upcoming Shirley Yang, among others. Is this person Yi Yisin? It seems like she's the only one left. Hello, may I ask if you are applying for the position of our archaeological team? Our team members have already been confirmed today, so we may not need anyone for now. It's not surprising to hear this during their travels. These people were just looking for someone who knows Yin Yang Feng Shui. And because of Hu Bai's previous mission, he was actually predetermined long ago. Don't you let me see your professor. I was introduced by Virginia. Just tell your professor and he will know. Yi Yisin hesitated at the words and said, wait a moment, I'll go talk to the professor. Yi Yisin actually really wants to travel around and stay, after all, having a handsome guy is also very pleasing to the eye. For waiting outside, Zhou didn't mind either. He believed that as long as I could enter this courtyard, Sherry Yang and the others would definitely stay behind. Zhou waited at the door for a few minutes before Yi Yisin ran over again. Hello, your surname is Zhou, please come in. Looking at Yi Yisin leading the way ahead, Zhou followed Yi Yisin into the courtyard. At this point, there were still quite a few large and small items in the yard, but they had already been zipped up. It seemed that the team had already been packed up. Soon he saw Shirley Yang, Professor Chen, and Professor Hao. Shirley Yang is more beautiful than he thought, with delicate eyebrows and skin as delicate as hibiscus, except for a hint of coldness that seems to come from her personality and also from her surface. Hello, are you Xiao Zhou? Yes, my name is Zhou and I would like to join your archaeological team. At this moment, Hao Aigua spoke up first and said, do you have any experience in desert survival or related archaeological research? If not, then we may not need teammates like you. To be honest, this jerk is the most disgusting character I've ever seen in a drama. With a frown on my face, I directly retorted, can you represent your teacher and team leader? If not, please shut up. Upon hearing this, Professor Chen spoke up first and said, don't be angry, little comrade. Comrade Haoigua is also thinking about the team. Upon hearing this, Shirley Yang frowned slightly and looked like an icy beauty. She spoke calmly, do you know what special abilities Mr. Zhou has? Our action this time is very special, and we cannot bring people without special abilities. Shirley Yang's words made Zhou understand that without some hard work, he might not be able to join the archaeological team. But it was also the same as my original intention. After thinking about traveling around for a while, I spoke straightforwardly, I know you want to go to Jingzhue ancient city, and I also need to go there, so I will charge you a toll and you will cover all the expenses on the way. Speaking of which, Zhou paused for a moment before continuing, to be honest, if it weren't for lack of money, I could have found the exquisite ancient city myself. At this moment, both Shirley Yang and Professor Chen's expressions changed. The two exchanged a glance, and Shirley Yang frowned and asked, have you ever been to the Jingzhue ancient city? That's not true, but I know some special news about Jingzhue ancient city, such as its location on the Black Dragon Ridge. Black Dragon Ridge. Yes, that's right, but there's only so much I can tell you. I'll let you know the rest when I join the gang. 0004, Diversion. No problem, I won't go. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Zhou deeply understands that the best bottom card is the moment when it hasn't been opened, so I'm not stupid. How could I say anything? Although Zhou didn't reveal much, even the slightest bit of information about the exquisite ancient city is worth their attention. Professor Chen looked at Shirley Yang and nodded. Professor Chen's idea was similar to that of Shirley Yang, but after she took a step forward, she agreed as expected. Okay, I agree to let you join the team. Your salary is $10,000, and I will double it for you when I find the Jingzhue ancient city. However, Zhou did not agree. Upon hearing this, he shook his head and said, $20,000, find the exquisite ancient city and double it. Seeing that Shirley Yang seemed a bit unhappy, Zhou shook her head and continued, do you think finding the Jingzhue ancient city would be enough? If you had my information, you might be able to live 2 more people. Jingzhue ancient city is far more dangerous than you think. In fact, besides liking your money, I also admire Hu Bai's 16-character Yin Yang secret technique. Although his ancestors only left half a scroll of paths, this half scroll is enough to give us more vitality. The exquisite ancient city is definitely not something that science can explain. So, when Zhou came to this point, he deliberately paused and looked at the 3 young people behind him before speaking, you are still young, so you are not mentally prepared to die. I advise you to give up. At that moment, all 3 young people turned a little pale, but immediately 2 foolish and bold young men bravely retorted. Who is leaving? We are the successors of socialism, and we believe that everything can be explained. It's just that being able to witness the other side of the world's dazzling world is something that many people crave. How can we possibly back down? Seeing the 2 of them saying this, Yi Yisin quickly followed suit and said, before coming, we had already understood the danger and signed a life and death certificate. We are not afraid of danger. Upon hearing this, Zhou nodded and then looked at Shirley Yang, as if waiting for her to express her opinion. Shirley Yang was also watching Zhou. 40,000 yuan was not much, and the property left by her family was enough to be paid dozens of times, so Shirley Yang nodded. Come over before 2 p.m. tomorrow afternoon, don't wait until later. Okay, see you tomorrow afternoon. After saying goodbye to a few people on a trip, you went to buy equipment. Now, unlike later generations who have strict inspections, no one even checks your luggage. How to say it? Whatever you bring, as long as no one notices. The train heading west is very lively, but because it is a train heading to Xinjiang, there are not many people. Before setting off, Zhou finally met 2 male protagonists, who looked a bit different from what he had imagined. However, it's not surprising that the protagonists in each drama are different, and Shirley Yang is also different. Any image of the 2 of them is possible. Don't you see that Wang Pengzi's changes are all kinds of? At this moment, Wang Kaixian was playing cards with Sa Diping and Chu Jian, and the three of them had been playing for an afternoon without feeling tired. However, in this era, there are not even mobile phones, so naturally there are no other entertainment programs. At this moment, Zhou Yu was reading a novel, and the author was unfamiliar, but it was much better than having nothing to do. At this moment, Professor Chen suddenly walked over and said to Hu Bai and Zhou Yu, "Xiao Hu, Xiao Zhou, come here and I'll talk to you about something." Upon hearing Professor Chen's words, Zhou Yu already knew in his heart what Professor Chen was saying to them. Although he was a bit curious about the plot, it did not exceed my estimation. Sure enough, when the two of them arrived at Professor Chen and Zueliang's soft bag, Zueliang said, "We may change our route to the Kunlun Glacier later, so let me tell you." At that moment, before Hu Ba could travel around and speak, he suddenly lost his voice and shouted, "Kunlun Glacier. Why didn't you say it earlier if you wanted to change lanes? We've been discussing it too." However, Hu Ba-yi didn't listen to Professor Chen's nonsense at all, and directly opened the door of the soft bag and walked out. At this moment, Zhou Yu also turned to Xue Liyang. Although Hu Ba did not affect his emotions, he did not intend to go to the Kunlun Glacier. There is no doubt about going to Kunlun Glacier and seeking death at this time without some powerful skills. It's better to wait honestly than to rely on luck. I haven't been to Kunlun Glacier, nor have I thought about going, so I'm waiting for you at Boston Lake in Xinjiang, Zhou Yu said directly upon hearing this. Shirley Yang watched Zhou Yu without speaking for a long time, and the two of them stood in a standoff. After all, Shirley Yang gave up first and said, "Okay, we'll find you when we reach Boston Lake." Seeing what Shirley Yang said, Zhou Yu thought for a moment and decided to reveal something. Anyway, they will also know about these things after finding the notebook, and now speaking them out can actually earn some trust and affirmation. Then you must hurry up and not delay the time to enter the desert. The exquisite ancient city only appears in the wind season. It's probably less than half a month away from the wind season now, so we need to depart in 10 days. Shirley Yang was taken aback by the words. She really didn't know about this, because her laptop is now under the Kunlun Glacier, and they don't even know this information. 0005, I left something on my ancestors. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Okay, thank you for your message. We will do it as soon as possible. I'll go call Hubei and you can sit down first. Let's talk about it together. You can talk about what you're going to talk about next. It doesn't have much to do with my destination for this trip. I'll take a step first. Seeing Zhou Yu determined not to go to the Kunlun Glacier, Shirley Yang didn't say anything more. After the two of them went out together, they saw Hu Bai and Wang Kaixian at the link point of the carriage. After Zhou Yu said hello, he directly returned to the carriage. Upon seeing Zhou Yu return, Sa Diping immediately spoke up and asked, "Zhou Yu, what did Professor Chen say to you?" Glancing at the curious people, Zhou Yu smiled and remained silent. Sometimes ignorance is the best. Okay, this is all nonsense, the key is that he doesn't want to talk to these people. It seems that I seldom talk to people other than those who are innocent. Just because I am not at the same height, you are tired of explaining, and I am too idle. Sa Diping, who was self-deprecating and uninteresting, was somewhat radiant, but Yi Yisin did not have this kind of consciousness. He looked at Zhou Yu with anticipation and spoke slightly weakly, "Zhou Yu brother, can you tell us?" The sound enters the ear, although not charming, it makes people feel familiar and difficult to refuse. Perhaps men naturally want to show off in front of women, and traveling is no exception. Zhou Yu spoke up and said, "It's not a big deal. You might have to change your route to the Kunlun Glacier later, and I'll be waiting for you in Xinjiang." "What? Are you changing lanes? So, brother Zhou, won't you come with us?" "Why?" Upon hearing Yi Yisin's question, Zhou Yu thought for a moment and decided to give them a little reminder. After all, it's not a pity that these three men have died. If Yi Yisin had died, it would have been a bit regrettable. The Kunlun Glacier is far more terrifying than you think. If you see a kind of bug emitting a faint blue flame, then run as far as you can. If you can't run away, remember to pat it with a shovel or something on your body, and never come into contact with it. Why? And we've never heard of this kind of bug before. Is there really such a bug? Men always have more patience with beautiful women, and he is no exception when traveling around. This is probably God's reward for food, right? This type of insect is a very special kind of insect. They may lurk underground or crawl into corpses, but overall, their lifespan is long, to the point where they can live in an uninhabited place, even if decades have passed. Of course, this is not the point. The point is that once these insects fly, they will catch fire. Their flames can generate temperatures of thousands of degrees, but in just a moment, they can burn you into ashes. Upon hearing what Zhou Yu said was so terrifying, Yi Yisin's 3 young men were also frightened. However, it was Hao Aigua who seemed to have some understanding and explained, "I have heard of this kind of bug mentioned by Xiao Zhou, officially translated as the fire ladybug. This kind of bug has only appeared in the information of the exploration team, and was even once considered a legend. Is there a fire ladybug in the Kunlun Glacier?" It's okay if he doesn't explain, but his explanation further confirms what Zhou Yu said. Upon hearing this, Zhou Yu didn't speak anymore, but nodded slightly solemnly. "I have already said everything I should. If something goes wrong like this, I can't blame him." The atmosphere was a bit silent for a moment, and Hao Aigua was not good at words, and he didn't know how to mobilize everyone, but he still tried his best. "Comrades, don't be discouraged. We may not be able to come across ladybugs. You can see that they only appear in rare archaeological logs, and they are not numerous and rarely appear." At this moment, although Zhou Yu knew that there were no less than 100,000 ladybugs in the Kunlun Glacier, he did not say anything more. After a moment of silence, Hu Ba Yi and Wang Pengzi walked back. At this moment, Hu Ba spoke to several people, "We will change our route to the Kunlun Glacier later." However, Hu Bai's words did not receive a response from everyone, and it was even terrifyingly quiet. Hu Ba was a bit surprised, and then he looked at Zhou Yu and understood. It seemed that Zhou Yu had already said it. But it doesn't make sense to be so quiet. Hubba couldn't help but ask, "What's wrong? Brother Hu, are there really ladybugs in the Kunlun Glacier?" At that moment, Hubba's expression paused before nodding solemnly. "That's right, there are indeed fire ladybugs in the Kunlun Glacier, but as long as we are careful, there shouldn't be any accidents." A few people nodded at the words, but Hu Ba looked at Zhou Yu. "Have you ever been to the Kunlun Glacier? Have you ever seen a ladybug?" Upon hearing this, Zhou Yu shook his head and said, "My ancestors have left something behind. I have seen it before, so I know that the Kunlun Glacier has great terror. Not only the Kunlun Glacier, but also the Changbai Mountains, Qinling Divine Trees, deserts outside the region, the Yellow River Estuary, and western Yunnan all have great terror." "What, I understand." Although the tour did not mention the horror, Hu Bai still speculated that it might be Zongzi like Niuxin Mountain, right? Invincible and powerful, if placed in ancient times, it would indeed be considered a great terror. However, at this moment, he did not know that the terror mentioned by Zhou Yu was thousands of times more terrifying than he had imagined. Not to mention the Candle Dragon in the Qinling Mountains, other places of great terror include the Bronze Gate in Changbai Mountain, the Demon Pagoda in Kunlun Glacier, and the 9-headed snake cypress in the desert outside the region. P.S. Regarding the issue of single female lead, harem, and stallion, I will stand up next. Please choose to explain the reasons. 0006, people are kind and lovely, but not good people. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hu Ba and his companions took a detour to the border, while they traveled to Urumqi. Urumqi is the largest city in Xinjiang, and obviously has better conditions than the Hui Autonomous County next to Boston Lake. I plan to stay here for 2 days before departing to the Hui Autonomous County next to Boston Lake. The border is at least 2 days away from here, with each trip lasting 4 days. In addition, they are going down the Kunlun Glacier, so he is not worried about delaying their meeting with Hu. I stayed in Urumqi for 2 days, and after purchasing some new equipment, I set off to the fat autonomous county of Boston Lake. At this time, there is basically no development here, so the nearest county next to Boston Lake is only here. Sure enough, after waiting for 4 more days, someone came to find him. No, perhaps that's not appropriate. The archaeological team had to come to find him because there is only one guest house in this county town. Because there are few people traveling, even these 2 levels of ghost houses are always empty. Brother Zhou, we finally see you. At this moment, Yi Yisen's emotions spiraled out of control and suddenly rushed into Zhou Yu's arms. At that moment, Zhou Yu was a bit surprised and looked at a few people. What's going on? Why did this girl lose control as soon as she came back? She looked like she saw her loved ones being wronged. Upon seeing this, Hubba smiled and said, "This girl has been a bit stimulated. Seeing someone die, she may not be able to accept it. She had been trying to suppress it before, but when she saw you just now, she suddenly felt a sense of injustice towards her family. It's okay, just hold on for a while longer. Anyway, you can't afford to lose out." Hu Ba's words made Yi Yisen feel a bit embarrassed. A feeling of being teased made her want to leave the embrace of traveling, but she was also afraid of being laughed at. With this thought in mind, she instead acted like an ostrich, with a posture of hiding her ears and stealing bells. Hubba was right. Yi Yisen had a psychological shadow because he knew about the dead and saw an avalanche. She saw that Zhou Yu was out of control, and she already had a sense of trust and favor towards Zhou Yu, which is why she suddenly lost control. At this moment, everyone smiled kindly at the 2 of them, except for Chu Jian and Sa Dipeng. Everyone hoped that Yi Yisen could have a home. But their faces were not that good anymore. They both had thoughts about Yi Yisen, just didn't know how to express themselves, so naturally they wouldn't have a good expression. At this moment, Yi Yisen's heart was pounding and jumping, obviously because of the nervousness that made her feel a heartbeat. As everyone left, Zhou Yu finally patted Yi Yisen and whispered in his ear, "Everyone has left. If we don't leave now, we'll be blocked again later." Yi Yisen suddenly let go of Zhou Yu, her face blushing and she was too shy to look at him. "Zhou. Brother Zhou, I'm leaving first." Seemingly sensing the gaze of Zhou Yu, Yi Yisen couldn't bear it and turned around before running away. Looking at the hurried appearance of the little girl, Zhou Yu smiled and didn't say anything. Everyone has a heart for beauty, and people are also simple and lovely. Unfortunately, they may be destined to deal with graves in their lifetime. He may not be able to protect such an inexperienced and physically weak girl who follows him. He can't possibly harm the girl, can he? Just as Zhou Yu was about to find Shueliyang, Hu Ba suddenly walked out of Professor Chen's room and said to Zhou Yu, "It seems that you have already finished talking to our girls. Come and chat. We have something to discuss with you." After comparing and analyzing the notebooks, Professor Shirley Yang and Professor Chen have confirmed the news of the trip. Whether it's the windy season or Lake Boston, it's already in line. Although I don't know what the Black Dragon Ridge is yet, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. So before departure, they want to ask this mysterious team member for any further information or suggestions. Okay, here we go. As Zhou Yu spoke, he walked over and the 2 of them entered Professor Chen's room together. There are only Professor Chen and Shirley Yang in Professor Chen's room, and the inspection team seems to have formed a management team unconsciously. He, Hu Bai, Professor Chen, and Shirley Yang are the central management, while the others are only responsible for obeying orders. "Are you here? We have found the diary, which indeed shows the path to finding the exquisite ancient city, but we still want to hear your opinion. This is the diary, come and take a look." Zhou Yu didn't take the notes, but instead spoke up, "Actually, I don't need to look at it. I roughly know that both Jingjue Ancient City and Zagrama God Mountain are in the same place. But now there are no obvious markers, and we don't have maps of Ancient God Mountain markers. So, when we want to find Jingjue Ancient City, there is only one way left, Zidu Hidden River. As the Zidu River, which has nurtured countless countries, it may have been a true great river in ancient times. Although it has now become an underground river, the rivers that occasionally appear in the desert always have traces to follow. I believe that understanding this is not only for us, but also for the local people. So, it's most important to find a tour guide who is familiar with the local area before departure. Before you came, I had already inquired and found out that the most famous and only person here who can enter the desert during the wind season is Lyman. However, his character is average. Unless you have a trustworthy friendship with him, he is likely to leave us in the desert. P.S. Vote for the flower tickets in your hands, aren't you afraid they might be damaged? 0007, Mysterious Prop. Liquid Nitrogen. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After hearing Zhou Yu speak so much in one breath, Shirley Yang spoke up. And Lyman. What kind of person is he? I don't know if the person you're talking about can be found. Looking back at someone who lacks character, she is not an easy person to handle. Is the gun in her hand just for fun? And Lyman, I forgot his specific name, it's quite long. However, he is a desert map of this place and has a good hand at raising camels. Whether he is a camel or a tour guide, he is none other than him. This is something that children know here. Of course, I have also found the person for you, but you may need to go and collect it. This person took a group of people to the desert before, but only he returned, so he is currently under investigation at the police station. Upon hearing this, the remaining 3 people exchanged a glance, and Hu-Ba immediately spoke up, my opinion is very simple. When entering the desert this time, we must prepare a tour guide. If we can't find the exquisite ancient city, let's talk about it separately. The key is to bring us back safely. Upon hearing Hu-Ba's words, Shirley Yang also spoke up. Camels are what we inevitably need, and the importance of a tour guide is also very important. The only issue of character is that I believe our leader should be able to ensure our safety, so my suggestion is for us to go and catch people. Professor Chen nodded at the words and agreed to accept the offer. We suffered from the lack of a tour guide during our trip to Kunlun Glacier this time, but we cannot be careless. I agree with your proposal, and we will go to the township police station to have a look later. I didn't go with the township police station during the trip. Anyway, when I went there, I basically just went through the procedures. Not only did he not go, but also the 3 young people did not go. While wandering around reading novels, Yi Yisan suddenly knocked on the door and walked in. Brother Zhou, this is the delicious food I brought. I brought you some, you try it. I only saw the small pastry in Yi Yisan's hand after traveling around. This is a pastry from Beiping, which is not available in Xinjiang. Zhou Yu smiled and said, this thing is indeed rare here, but you'd better keep it for now. There's nothing in the desert, and this pastry is a rare delicacy. It's okay, Brother Zhou. I still have a lot left. If you want to eat, I can get it for you anytime. Seeing the courteous smile on the girl's face, it was hard to refuse her travels, and after eating meat for a few days, it was rare to have something else to eat. Okay, then I won't be disrespectful. Just as Zhou Yu was going to get some cakes, Yi Yisan suddenly saw some strange small bottles on Zhou Yu's backpack. The bottle seems to be made of stainless steel, slightly thicker than the thumb, but not much thicker. What is inside? You should know that although stainless steel has been available for a long time, it is not a roadside product and can be considered relatively rare. Brother Zhou, what is this? Upon hearing this, Zhou Yu turned around and was immediately shocked. Don't move. As Zhou Yu spoke, he quickly took a step forward and grabbed Yi Yisan's hand in an instant. At this moment, Yi Yisan surprisingly felt a bit aggrieved. What, being so kind to him, I'm just curious about these small bottles. As for the fire, isn't it? This thing is very dangerous, it's liquid nitrogen. If you open it and grab it, your hands will die in less than 3 seconds. Ah, Brother Zhou, what are you doing with such dangerous things? Yi Yisin's grievances were immediately replaced by fear. What would have happened if he had opened his hand just now? At the same time, she felt a little happy and warm in her heart. It turned out that he was worried about me. Zhou Yu explained, liquid nitrogen has an ability that gas nitrogen does not possess, which is to quickly absorb the heat around it, so be prepared with a little bit. Don't worry, I have specially treated it with a dedicated glass dewar bottle and a layer of cotton wool to prevent collision, which is enough to ensure that it will not be easily damaged. Dewar bottle. What is that? Yi Yisin is only studying archaeology, and she may even know more about liquid nitrogen. She has no idea about things like dewar bottles. Simply put, a dewar bottle is a bottle with a vacuum layer. For example, the hot water bottle we use in daily life is a dewar bottle, which can effectively insulate heat or cold. It turned out to be a hot water bottle, so tall and upscale, I thought it was something. Yi Yisin is obviously a bit disappointed with this answer, but as long as she knows there is no danger, it's good. Thinking this way, Yi Yisin suddenly felt something was wrong. The next second, she immediately blushed and pulled her hand out of Zhou Yu's hand. Zhou. Brother Zhou, I'm going out first. Without waiting for Zhou Yu to speak again, Yi Yisin had already run away. Seeing this, Zhou Yu couldn't help but laugh. Women in this era are really different from those in later generations. Just take a look and you'll blush. If in the future, one might simply say, handsome guy, let's go open a house. But that's even better. Who wouldn't like a pure-hearted girl? Before nightfall, Hu Ba and a few others returned. Watching a few people return, Zhou Yu still asked a symbolic question. How's it going? Has the tour guide's matter been resolved yet? Before Shirley Yang and the others could speak, Wang Pengzi became proud first. That's right, don't you see who will take action? The grandson wants to only take money and not work. With just a few words, we old who can take care of him. P.S. Can anyone guess how liquid nitrogen is used? 0008, scaring people. Together. You are listening at novelfull.audio. For this result, Zhou Yu was not surprised at all. He turned his head and looked at the 3 young people he admired. Zhou Yu shook his head and chuckled. Sure enough, I have lost the passion and admiration of young people. Is this just an old mindset? Yes, even if you are reborn, you have become a person of 2 generations. It is only through the plot that a fool can express such excitement. Why do we say that spoilers must die? It's because it will completely deprive people of the gaming experience. Do you pretend to be surprised and coax the children? It's not for my own family. Alright, everyone, have a good meal and rest today. Take a day off tomorrow, and we'll go into the desert the day after tomorrow. Upon hearing Hu Bayi's words, everyone seemed excited. For these archaeological teams, there was nothing more attractive than ancient cities and tombs. As for taking only 1 day off, that's not a big deal. The next day, Shirley Yang treated everyone to a good meal, and because it was the last day before entering the desert, she roasted a whole lamb. Unfortunately, I can't take it with me on the road. This delicious food may not be available for half a month in the future. Early the day after tomorrow, Lyman arrived at the guest house. Despite being pinched by Hu Ba's braids, he couldn't do anything about it. The object on his body couldn't be traced back, and if he didn't explain it properly, there would be a risk of imprisonment. Although Lyman was helpless, he was not discouraged. At most, these people were similar to those before. At most, they would not be able to support themselves when they reached the edge of the inner desert. At most, they could take them for a ride. At this moment, He was completely unaware that the persistence of these people was different from the people he had led before. I didn't have any free time during the trip. After packing my things, I checked again. Just then, Hao Aigua suddenly walked in from outside. "Comrade Xiaohu, come on, come on." Hu Ba had some doubts, but still took a few steps with Hao Aigua. "This only man is not suitable as a guide, I disagree." Upon hearing the words, Hu Ba frowned and realized that he was unwilling to be overturned by someone else. But in the spirit of democracy, Hu Bai still asked, "What is Professor Hao's opinion?" "I have already inquired and found out that there is a problem with this person's quality. We cannot hand over our lives and safety to such people. What if we are trying to harm our lives in the desert? What if we are thrown into the desert? This kind of thing is not impossible in probability." Listening to Sa Dipeng also standing on his side, Professor Hao nodded more confidently. At this moment, Zhou Yu, who was gathered around, suddenly laughed. He clearly remembered this scene, and Professor Hao was afraid that he would be slapped in the face soon. Sure enough, upon hearing this, Wang Pengzi directly provoked. He has always been unhappy with this person called Hao Aigua, looks down on him everywhere, and even opposes him. "I think this seems like you did it." At this moment, Hao Aigua was almost furious. "What did I do? Am I that kind of person?" But just as he was about to speak, his good teammate Sa Dipeng had already taken the lead and said, "This kind of thing is also possible in probability." Hao Aigua was speechless with anger. "I'm afraid this foolish student has gone crazy." Hu Ba couldn't help but laugh and said, "Professor Hao, I and the fat guy are watching. Even if he doesn't care about us all, he has to take care of himself, right? This kind of thing cannot be unexpected. Patriotic, every time we work in the wilderness, there are inevitably dangers. You are also an old archaeologist. This route is something we have promoted before, and Xiao Hu also has desert experience. This only is full of desert maps, and I think we should use people without doubt." At this moment, Zhou Yu also spoke up, "Without someone familiar with the Zita River leading the team, we cannot find the Jingjue ancient city, so Uncle and Lyman must come with us. Everyone has said so, Hao Aigua himself is already struggling alone. Therefore, he had to agree. I know. The teacher has been preparing for the excellence of the ancient city for a lifetime. Okay, since that's the case, let's continue preparing." However, after they finished speaking, and Lyman was about to speak up. This was his usual trick, to scare people first, and then he didn't have to go into the desert to make money again. It was so delightful. "Have you all discussed it? I have something to say. It's the windy season now, the most dangerous time in the desert. Are you going to die? If you encounter the wind, saving your life is the most important thing." "No wonder I am." And Lyman's words made everyone feel uneasy. Hu Ba couldn't help but frown and said, "Old man, what do you mean? What are you trying to say? It's money, right?" However, before Lyman could speak, Zhou Yu spoke up and said, "He's right or wrong. He's just trying to scare us and make us give up now. But he's not lying. The wind season is the most dangerous time in the desert. Can it be considered a natural disaster? Have you ever heard of a black sandstorm? When a sandstorm blows and sand hits your face, it hurts. The sand that covers the sky and the sun, you can't even see the direction clearly. It can be said that it won't take long, maybe less than half an hour, and you will be buried under the sand. So, as I said, if you're not mentally prepared to die, you should stay. P.S. Today is over, we will add another chapter later. Add more rules. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Cumulative reward 3000 flowers 3000 evaluation vote 2000 monthly pass 100 urge for updates. This goes through the system. It is up to the old iron workers to update them. They also keep these. Enjoy. By the way, a maximum of 7 shifts per day, and any excess will be retained until the next day. 0009, the issue of sand sculpture must be contained, with added changes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Is this young man knowledgeable? I can't hide it from you. Since you know the danger, please advise them well and don't let them die. Hehe, you've thought too much. Not to mention them, I'm also going to Xinjiang Ancient City. Whether you go or not, I will definitely go to Xinjiang Ancient City. If you don't go, then I will set off with a guide. Upon hearing Zhou Yu's words, Shirley Yang immediately spoke up and said, I'll go too. She looked at Professor Chen and said, Professor, you can discuss whether you're going again. I must go. Besides, you two must also follow. Hu Ba was speechless upon hearing this, but he still spoke up, Don't worry, Miss Yang. If I take your money, I won't leave my employer behind. As long as you go, then I and the fat guy will follow. At this moment, Professor Chen also turned his head and spoke to several people, since the danger is so great, you should consider it. I believe that with Comrade Xiaohu and Xiaozhou present, we can also find the exquisite ancient city. Hao Aigua usually respects his teachers the most. Upon hearing this, he immediately spoke up and said, Teacher, I definitely want to come with you. I had thought about it before I came. As you said, archaeology is not dangerous. After Hao Aigua finished speaking, he turned his head and the 3 young people were immediately startled. Then they quickly began to express their willingness to go. Upon seeing this, Professor Chen felt somewhat relieved. Archaeology should have the courage to go forward and continue to die. Alright, pack your things, we're ready to go. At around 10 o'clock, the camel caravan sets off, and a group of 10 people looks a bit like an ancient camel caravan. They set off from Lake Boston and continued southwest along the river channel of the Peacock River. The initial section of the road is not considered a desert at all. In some areas, the riverbed has not completely dried up, and the surrounding sand is also shallow. There are scattered small lakes and seaweed everywhere, surrounded by some jujube trees, Populus euphratica, and shrubs. Everyone has prepared sufficient supplies, but only Zhou Yu knows that they are not enough, whether it is water or anything else. Especially water, a lot may be lost on the road. Fortunately, he also prepared some special bags for water, which can be replenished if it comes into contact with the water source. On the first day of departure, I discovered some problems during the trip. When I used to read books and watch TV, I used to think that there were only a few people involved, but now he can't ignore it. So while eating and resting, the group gathered around and said, Everyone, wait. I've noticed a problem. You seem to be a bit indifferent to the desert. When it comes to traveling, everyone's expressions seem to be like this. Not only they, but also Hu Bai, seem to think the same way. After all, they will not enter the depths of the desert during desert exercises, and following the large army is not as much to worry about now. Seeing this, Zhou Yu is really curious about how lucky they were to not die in the desert back then. Okay, we can talk about whether we respect the desert or not, but now I have something to say. The desert is extremely short of water, and you drink water too quickly. Not only that, but when you eat in the desert, do you still want to wash your hands first? What's wrong? Do you think there are too many hoses? Or do the rivers we have come all the way make you feel that there is no shortage of water? For a moment, everyone seemed a bit angry. They didn't understand, so why don't they just use some water? Didn't it mean there was a hydration point on the way? Can't we just make up for it later? At this moment, an Lyman, who had been sitting on the side without speaking, spoke up. Are you a reasonable person? At your water usage speed, I'm afraid we need to change the road. I'm not responsible for the extra time spent on the road, and you better pray that we can still find water deep in the desert. After Enli finished speaking, several people looked over and Wang Pengzi spoke directly, Old man, what do you mean? Friend, I don't mean much. Does this guy really understand the desert? Can you let him explain? For a moment, all 8 pairs of eyes turned to Zhou Yu, except for Enliman who was smoking on his own. Seeing the gazes of several people, Zhou Yu paused and said, deserts are ever changing, especially in the depths of the desert during the windy season. Many water sources will disappear in the flow of the desert, and new water sources will also appear. So perhaps new water sources may appear in the desert, but they may not necessarily be in their original positions. So when walking in the desert, always leave yourself a way out. Don't always think that I still have water now, enough to support the next water source, because you never know if the next water source still exists. At that moment, several people changed their colors one after another. They glanced at their clean hands but suddenly felt a bit dazzling. For a moment, several people felt guilty and dared not watch the tour. Seeing this, the significance of education has already been realized, and the tour did not hesitate, but once again brought up the issue of drinking water. Regarding drinking water, we are still by the Peacock River now, so there is no need to be too frugal. However, after leaving the Peacock River, we can no longer drink so much water. It is best to take a sip of water and let it fully function before swallowing it. This will allow us to walk in the desert for more time. Alright, that's all I have to say. Everyone should eat and drink now. P.S. I was scared to death. I posted an update and added 1,500 more flowers. I hope there won't be any updates today.